Servitor. How you doing, bud? Thanks for joining. So hopefully it'll be a decent show and we can get everybody in. Alright, Sam, how you doing, pal?
Well, thanks, mate. How you
Yeah,
doing?
not bad. Have you recovered from Sunday's disappointment, or are you just used to it now as an England fan?
Do you know what? I set myself up for Spain hammering them, so I think England did all right. Actually, it's not too bad to keep it a 2-1. To be fair, but it's great being over here in the States, mate, because no one really cares, and it's not all like everybody mopey for a week afterwards. So everybody just like it's normal, and I was just like, okay, I can crack on. So yeah, not
And
too bad.
how do you feel about Southgate leaving? Are you happy
Yeah,
with that, or
yeah,
yeah?
happy about that, mate.
Alright, Adam, how you doing, pal? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, man. So, as I said to you privately, Casey's had a bit of a disaster with his moving, so he's had to step away. And Sam has kindly offered to join us. And Sam's actually a Londoner, but he's actually living in Florida because the UK kicked him out. So, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining, Sam, as well.
So he went to the American penal colony.
Yeah, yeah. Australia was full, so we just sent him to the American colonies just to get rid of him. So thanks, Adam, for taking your time out on a busy day and getting and doing this with us. The first question I always ask everybody, just to breeze ourselves into it, is what age were you when you first started doing the modelling, painting? What got you into it, and what was the first model that you painted?
So, okay, I would think I was 11-ish. So like 96 maybe it was. So 11 or 12 years old. My cousins and I were hanging out. We were reading Tolkien. We built Middle Earth out of Legos. And then we saw a Games Workshop store. I think it was a Games Workshop store back then. Now they're called Warhammer stores. And of course there were wood elves and orcs, and you had the Empire and Bretonnian Knights, and it was like, holy crap, this is Middle Earth miniatures, and we can paint them. So we started painting then. I think the first miniature that I painted to completion was the old pewter aerial model from the Wood Elf range.
Sweet. And who was the first person to actually like start doing the Tolkien stuff? Was it yourself, or was it an older member of your family, or what?
Pretty much me and my cousins.
Sweet, man. And whereabouts was it you grew up yourself? Because obviously you don't sound like British, so it must have been quite a rare thing to find in America back in the mid-90s.
Mid to late 90s, it wasn't as big as it is today for sure. Yeah, it was a bit rare. And it's something that I kind of, because, I played varsity sports in high school, and, you didn't want to be the kid who's like, hey, check out my nerdy miniatures, because then you would have really gotten your ass kicked. But thankfully times have changed. I did kind of put the miniatures away for a little bit, and then obviously went to university, and I was racing bicycles and had a whole different career path, and that actually led me back to miniatures about 15 years ago or so. And here I am.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned about getting beat up as Joe if you brought out the old plastic crack. Like, it must have been a universal thing, because when I went to school in Scotland, and probably Sam as well in London, if you dared mention that you were into Dungeons and Dragons or Warhammer, your head would have been shoved so far down the toilet you'd have tasted the sewers. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Am I wrong there, Sam?
Yeah, totally, mate. I think I don't know. I find it like over here in the States, they're a little bit being nerdy's now pretty cool. There's a lot of kids that are doing the D&D clubs at school are more popular or as popular as the sports are now. So for me, that's just awesome to see.
I have a kind of funny story there. Like, my wife is a dentist, and she has an employee that works the front desk who's, an attractive young woman who used to be a cheerleader for the New Orleans Saints. That's an American football club here in New Orleans. So she was a Saint Sation, not the demographic that you would ever expect to play D&D or war games, let alone board games for that matter. But my wife went into the office, and she was like, hey, Doc, like, does your husband paint, D&D miniatures on YouTube for work? And she's like, sort of. Why are you asking? And she's like, don't tell anybody, but I play D&D. And it's like, there is a changing demographic in the people that play miniatures. I mean, just look at social media. I mean, it's not just people that look like us anymore. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, sorry, Sam, on you go.
I was going to say, yeah, Henry Cavill's been majorly important in that. Even my wife, thinking that I was a proper nerd doing this for as many years as I've done. As soon as Henry Cavill came along on an interview and said he played Warhammer, and she was just like, "Oh my god!" And I could hear her brain clicking, going, "Oh my god, my husband isn't actually that bad," because Henry Cavill plays Warhammer 40K.
She's going, oh, maybe that's the next evolution. That's the next phase of his hobby. He's going to start looking like Henry Cavill.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, her only thought was, can Sam potentially get a game with Henry of 40K, and does she get to meet him? That was really it. So which is fine. But I think he's been great for the hobby, and anybody. There's been a lot more people like Henry that have done it.
Oh yeah.
Do you feel that here in the States, are you states based?
I am. I'm only a couple states away. I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana. So just due west.
You're about 3-4 hours from me. I'm in the
Florida.
I'm Panhandle. So
4 hours.
Panhandle. Yeah, so that's not too bad. Well, maybe we'll have to get gaming one day. What's your sort of diary like now? Obviously, I know that the Army Painter side of things for you is pretty big, and having a quick look at what you've done in the past, is your diary now completely full of exhibitions, cons, those sorts of things? Because I believe I might have actually bumped into you at Adepticon last year or the year before. I can't remember. But I know you're busy with that. Is it now like your calendar is just full of stuff?
Honestly, my calendar in terms of travel, in a weird way, has become easier. So when I was hired by the company, I was doing some consumer event shows, but a lot of trade events. So going to events like Gamma, distributor open houses, things like that, where it's very much trade focused. And I've kind of evolved in my role now to where I'm the head of the tactical marketing department. So this is all of the content that you see for the most part. It's also where all the product development comes from at the company. So I am going to more trade shows, but I'm more focused to LVO, the Las Vegas Open, Adepticon. I will go to Gamma. And I hope in the future that I'll go to a couple more throughout the year. But the beautiful thing about being with this company and progressing is that I've been able to hire people that are much more talented than I am to fulfill those roles in a more focused manner. So we have Kat Jackson and Caleb Wissenbeck, formerly of CK Studios. And they are now our event team. So they were just at Origins and then the NATC in Chattanooga, and they're on their way to San Diego for San Diego Comic-Con. Then they'll be at Gen Con Nova. So really ramping up our first year of having a full US event team. But, 4 trips out of the year, typically I'm going back to Denmark to work with my team there. I actually just got back last week with my family. I brought them over for the first time, which was pretty amazing. But a lot of my diary nowadays is tending to my 2 children and managing my wild and crazy team of tactical marketeers.
So, and a follow-up question. Sorry, Doug, I just wanted to follow up from that. I know, like, I bumped into Sam Lenz a few times in the past, and I was, because obviously Monument Hobbies and me are kind of teamy. I'm one of their monumental painters. And I was honestly surprised when Sam turned around and he was telling me about the relationship with you guys. So obviously, as soon as Sam turns around and Caleb and those sorts of people started taking on board, I'm like, hold on a minute, Army Painter are stepping up a little bit here with their kind of, I wouldn't say aggressive, but I was noticing it more, and I was thinking, do you know what? This is really good that you guys are trying to push it a little bit with everybody else in the market.
I also think of it slightly differently. It's not that we're being more aggressive. It's just that because we've worked really hard and had some successful years, it's now enabled us to pursue different types of sponsorship, different types of promotion to expand on relationships that we've had. Sam has, and you can go back and there's articles that I've been interviewed in. He has long been my favorite painter, and I've always wanted to work with and support him. I've been friends with Adam Loper from Uncle Adam from Tabletop Minions
Yep.
for years before I started working for this company. Now that we're pushing kind of the envelope and doing new things and trying new things, the Army Painter Factory team is, from my point of view, the first official sponsorship that exists in our industry like this. I come from a sports marketing background, so it's kind of a little bit of that where you have these factory racing teams. This is our factory, hobby team, for lack of a better term. And it's not just competitive focused, with Sam. It's more about creating better content, collaborating in new ways. And I think you're going to start to see more content between us and Sam and other factory team members that really showcase that in the near future.
Sweet. Now, as I said, it's been great seeing you guys come from kind of where I saw you maybe 5-6 years ago, as that kind of alternative on the kind of more cost-effective side of hobbying, providing good, reasonable paints, and kind of just staying there. And then I wondered, because the development of paint itself in the market at the moment is constantly going forward and forward and forward, which for us as hobbyists is amazing.
Yep.
Because getting better quality paints to use, and different options available to us, whether it be speed paints or fanatic paints, or that sort of side of things, or whether it be contrast based mediums, inks, all of this different stuff. I wish that I'd had 25-30 years ago when painting.
Right. So it's actually really funny that you say that. When I was at LVO, there was a young gentleman who came and wanted to paint, and it was his first miniature. He bought it at the Games Workshop booth. He assembled it, he primed it at home, and then he brought it and he sat down at the booth. He goes, "Okay, how do I paint this?" And it was that big manticore looking guy. And I was like, "Well, what color do you want to paint it?" And he says, "Yellow." And I'm like, "Okay, well, there's 3 different ways that we could paint yellow. 4 different ways. We could color prime it yellow to start. That'll be real easy. We could use an airbrush, but you're new. You could brush paint it, or you could speed paint it." And, we didn't have 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't have these one coat paint solutions. You didn't have a Zealot yellow that was just easy one coat yellow. And you didn't have a high coverage yellow like Fanatic Demonic yellow, where you could almost get one coat coverage over black primer with it. So in a weird way, like, new hobbyists that are getting started are somewhat spoiled. And I think there might be, our industry tends to be a little bit gatekeepy, sometimes. So like, "Oh, well, that's not the way that we did it back." Who cares?
Yeah.
If it makes more people have more fun in the hobby, whether it's painting or gaming, then what's wrong with that? And I think that's great. And I think that it's something that we should celebrate. And I think, honestly, as industry members, as people that have made the paints and the products, I think we should kind of step back and be like, wow, we've come a long, long way.
And I think as well, it's not just the paints. Like, I used to play Hero Quest and Space Crusade, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I'll tell this story, pretty much I tell the story every week, but I stepped away from Star Wars because I read a bad book, started reading the Horus Heresy books, and then slowly got back into the painting. And the biggest difference from when I was painting, like mid-90s, to now, it's not just the paints, but it's also the wet palette. That's a total game changer, and I use the extra large one now, which is, I don't know what to put in the wee holes, so I just used it. Yeah, 100%. That I think that as well, and we use bringing out that even bigger one, the XL one, which I've got. That is just a game changer for your paints, because it keeps them fresh for so long as well. I can't even remember what I was going to ask now after saying that.
Don't you love that?
So yeah.
But I can carry on, dude. I've got like 50 million questions to ask in general, and one of them's just been echoed actually on the chat. Is what's the sort of data sales data worldwide for you guys on the different breakdowns of different paints. So what's the percentage of your sales as kind of speed paint to traditional, acrylics to washes to those kind of that kind of side of things?
So I think a good way to without giving up too much information, right? And I think it's too soon to tell with Fanatic because it's just hit the market a couple of months
Yeah.
ago. And speed paint was a huge, massive release for us, both times with the original 23 colors and then when we expanded to 89. So without giving too much proprietary information, I think if you look at the size of the ranges is usually a pretty good indication. There's 18 washes in the Fanatic range. There's 18 metallics in the Fanatic range. There's 18 effects paints in the Fanatic range. Right around 90 to 126 colors in both. Well, obviously Fanatic's much bigger because of the flexible triads. That would be one good way to indicate it. But airbrushing is always going to be the smallest category because there are less people that do it. And those that do initially try with their basic paints and thinning them. Trying a proper airbrush ready paint is actually a game changer. I like to say it removes the hurdles because if you take the guesswork out of it, and you don't need to thin it. It's actually an airbrush ready paint right from the bottle. Then it's gonna, to what the Real Housewife of the Underhive said earlier, like it broadens the hobby. It makes it easier for people to keep going. But it's difficult to say, but I would venture to guess that, any range, the acrylics are going to be over 50%. And if there is a good one coat solution like speed paint or a contrast where it's a proper one coat solution, I would say that that's probably pushing that for that company. But it also, there's so many different things that you have to look at: distribution, your fill rates. As an industry, our fill rates are I can't imagine that any other paint companies are as good as ours. Busiest times of year for us, we have big releases, our fill rates are 98.7%. That's unheard of in most industries. So that's one of the things that we take a great deal of pride on. If a retailer you can't see it, it's out of frame, but one of our retail displays in their store, it needs to make the money, right? Which means it needs to be stocked. They need to be able to restock their rack. The hardest bottle of paint to sell is one that you don't have, right? So that's one area where I think we take a great deal of pride and we put a big emphasis is making sure we are producing, making sure that we have stock, and then hoping that our distributors and retail partners are able to keep up, right? But I think that also determines it for a lot of different companies. I can't say what any of the other paint companies in our industry do because I don't know what their production ratios are or their fill rates. So that's a hard number to estimate.
And I mean, you're always going to be fighting against Citadel. Like we've discussed it with previous guests because we always ask them, who do you use now? Because we all see Citadel is kind of like training wheels on a bike.
Mm-hmm.
You put the training wheels on, you get to learn how to use those paints, and then you start branching off into various different types. And the market just seems so saturated just now because if you work for Games Workshop and you've left, you've now got a painting brand out. How do you cope with that, or is it just because you've got such good paints and products that it's just that returning customer that you keep getting back?
I think it's a lot of things. Our customer base, that's something that I could speak better, I think maybe more intelligently on than the actual number breakdowns. But I think when you look at our company 7 years ago when I started, we were I like to call it the 3 A's. We were the affordable, available, approachable brand, right? We were the next best new alternative. And we were the only alternative to Games Workshop that was a miniature based and a tabletop based paint brand. The other competitors were scale model that had some crossover, right? We were miniatures. I always like to say we're a game company without a game.
Yeah.
To start that was like the first grab. That was the first straw. And then I think what happened is that as people got to know us as a business and us as a company and the culture of our company and the people behind the products, I think that our customers, that helped to build some brand loyalty because when they recognize that we're hobbyists too, and we're just a bunch of dorks that like to have fun, we work really hard, but we like to have fun. I think that's been endearing to some of our customer base for sure. Not all of it. I read the comments. There's a lot of people that hate me. They hate my face and voice and what I represent, but that's great. It's fine. but I think a lot of our customers are drawn to us based on how we do business, right? Not just what we sell. But now we were like the AAA, the affordable, available, approachable. What we've transitioned to be is also a performance and a premium product line that professionals can use. So you like my alliteration, it's the 3 A's and the 3 P's. So right now I like to think that we have the total package. There's always area for, improvement. There's no such thing as a perfect paint range. When we said that we probably made the best paints in the world, that was an ode to another Danish company, Carlsberg beer, probably the best beer in the world.
Yeah.
But also the reason behind that, why we say that, is because when we develop our paint, we don't develop it in a vacuum of trying to do one thing. We're not just trying to make the best artist paints in the world that the top end painters will only use. We also have to make a paint that the beginner painter can find utility in, and also the gamer can find utility in, and everybody in between. And I also had to work at the retail level. So, we like to say that we had 3 core categories. That's the painters, that's your Sam Lenses of the world. Then it's the gamers, that's your Bo, that's your Art of War, that's your Phil the Glacial Geek, the people are just painting to play. And then the hobbyists, that's everybody in between. That maybe plays a little bit, likes to paint, is trying to progress. But another big focus for us is recruitment and new painters, right? So if, again, going back to that yellow paint story, when I go to a trade show, or Kat and Caleb are at a trade show, and you have a young kid there, or an old woman who's never painted a miniature before, and they sit down and they want to paint, it should be approachable. It should be fun.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to fight the product that they're using. I think that with the technology that we have in our products today and the usability, we really have a paint brand that speaks to everybody.
And it's not, as I say, it's not just the paints as well. Like, your brushes are really good, and they're not overly expensive, and they're not as cheap as some other brands. So when you do buy an army painter brush, you know that it's actually going to last a good bit longer. So it's not just your paints. I think the whole package is actually really pretty decent going forward. So is there scope to bringing out more brushes? Is there scope for that? Because you've done the paints, is there anything about brushes coming out in the future that you can maybe tell us a wee sneaky about?
I mean, brushes are in an interesting spot in from a global standpoint, due to global conflicts and other shortages. Sable hair is becoming harder and harder to get. So I would expect that you would see a big focus on synthetics in the future. Synthetics are getting better. But we are always, what I can say is that we are always testing. We've had the factory team over for a visit recently, and we had some products in front of them that were to do some testing. And I can say that the results of the blind testing were actually quite a surprise for us. So I would keep your eye out. Our company's changing, and I'm not going to answer your question directly because I can't. But our company's changing, right? To where we just had 3.5 major releases. We had the entire airbrush range, and that was after we put together the tool range. Then we had speed paint, and then we did speed paint again, and all the while we were working on Fanatic. We have a completely different company than we did 4 years ago. But that's meant that we've been so big release focused, big release, big release, big release. Now we have to fill in with other things. We also have to do just underlying support of the system and the products that we have. But we are still hard at work, and we're a very opportunistic company. And we have some things in the works right now that make it easy for me to wake up on those 4:00 mornings when I have to meet over in Denmark, because it's really exciting, and I cannot wait to share more news, hopefully this fall.
So just going to deviate slightly away from army painting and concentrate more on yourself. And I know Sam's got about 1 million questions, and we can come back to your questions in a bit, Sam. So you said that you dabbled it when you were a kid. When did you stop? Like, roughly, it's usually between the ages of like 16 and 20 people usually give it up. Was that the same for yourself?
Approximately. So like I had moved from Pennsylvania to Ohio my freshman year of high school, so about 14 years old. So in that first year, it was actually really nice for me. Like I started building an army and I was painting more. But then, of course, you know, you start playing sports, and soon after that, you're getting a job because you want to buy a car, and then girls are a thing, and
Yeah.
you want to pay attention to them. Um, and so I took a bit of a break there, you know, between the ages of, I'd say, 15 to 19, 20. And around 20, I had a girlfriend when I was at university, and she was doing a summer abroad. And I wanted to have something to do because I didn't have a girlfriend to hang out with. And I saw this new faction were released in 40K because I was a fantasy guy. I didn't want to touch 40K. The miniatures at the time didn't appeal to me whatsoever. The lore didn't appeal to me whatsoever. And then you see Tau. You see these crazy grav tanks and these big rail guns, and it's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to paint that. So I bought a few miniatures, painted, and then again put them away for, I mean, almost 10 years.
Right.
In fact, I married my wife, and the topic of Warhammer had never come up with my wife. And it was after a bike ride. Somebody had mentioned Bretonian Knights, and I was like, I remember that. What are you talking about? Let's circle back here for a second. And the next day I was at a workshop store, bought some miniatures, went back to my Tau army, and the rest is history.
Yeah, because that's one of the questions I like to ask people. And like one of our former guests, I think Son and her husband's just joined, who's Berserk for Apothecaries. I always ask them, like, how do you introduce your plastic crack addiction to somebody that you're seeing? And it's always the same story. Well, I don't tell them in the first date. I kind of just leave hints lying about. And I think that's what Housewife of the Underhive, she's seen Berserker's table sitting there, and then slowly, and now she's fully fledged into the Underhive, and she's totally obsessed with that now. It's mad how it's just some girls who just, it's their boyfriends get them into it, and then that's it. They overtake their boyfriends, and because they do makeup, they become much better painters than what their boyfriends have ever been.
Yeah.
Does your wife dabble in the Warhammer world?
No, and I'm, to some degree, I'm thankful that she doesn't, because so my wife is a dentist, so she has very fine motor skills. She hates crafting. She hates artsy things, period. She just doesn't like it, right? But I think that if she did do it, she would be excellent. I actually gave her a miniature to bring because I was trying to do some sculpting for a Golden Demon piece that I'm working on. And I actually gave her like a test piece to bring to her office so that she could drill it, because she has all the tiny drills and the loops and everything. And she was into that, but I don't know that I'll ever get her to paint. It's probably for the better that those parts of our lives are separate. But I do have two daughters, and the youngest is actually taking a nap upstairs right now. It's summertime, and the oldest is at a camp at the Humane Society working with the animals. But she has a giant Necron army.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first started playing 40K again, you know, I learned from basically three people. I mean, there were a bunch of other people, and, you know, shout out Daryl Bobajelic, shout out Josh, Steve Bewley. You know, these people taught me how to play, but there was also Adam and Mary Newton, a husband and wife. And Mary beat the shit out of all of us multiple times. And you know, she's still I think she's a top ranked Marvel Crisis Protocol player, or what is the game now? Shatterpoint. You know, Adam is, I think, a close to national champion X-Wing player. But, you know, throughout it, there's always been women that played. You know, shout out to the War Dolls. I've got my sticker up on my mantle up here. But I do want to see more women play, whether it's somebody's wife, girlfriend, sister, mom, aunt. You know, we need more people playing.
Yeah, and like with Inquisition as well, like we always try and get girls on all the time, because it's just to show that diversity, that it's no longer a sweaty wee 13-year-old who's in the chess club and likes to read Dungeons and Dragon novels. It is people like Brooke and Tiss Paint Minis and SJ Paintswear, all great girls at what they do, and having them in the hobby and promoting them is amazing as well. And also Louise Sugden, who is probably one of the most well-known girls just now in and about the Warhammer universe and miniature universe.
She's one of the most influential people in this industry, let alone, I think when people realize everything that she did at Games Workshop, she is an absolute rock star.
Yeah.
Yeah, Louise is a beast. She's the best.
And it's just so good to have somebody like that out there, just to really show that it is for everybody. And I know there was a bit of controversy about the whole Custodes being female and all that as well, but the lore always evolved. I know. Now, for me,
So,
I don't actually care, to be honest, because if it influences one girl to create up a complete storyline of Space Marines,
yep.
and maybe one of the lost Primarchs is a female Primarch, people will lose their nut. And I'm very vocal on the fact that I don't care. It's not going to affect how I paint or if I play. It's not going to affect that.
I think it's really funny when people who read the lore say that the lore is wrong by the people who produce the lore. That's the part that I can't. Right. But what is wrong with being inclusive? What is wrong with having representation in our hobby? Whether it's people of color, whether it's women. I mean, we should all want to share this hobby with as many people as possible,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know. The first miniature I painted was a woman. It was Ariel. Like, what a badass! Like, she was the queen of Athalloran. We do need more women in the lore, I think, and in the miniatures. And it doesn't have to be just big-breasted, scantily clad women. Like, let them be powerful women. Let them be strong women, smart women. It's like I tell my daughters all the time, like, and my wife tells them all the time, you are brave, you are smart, you are kind, you are loved.
Yeah.
Let's have more brave, strong, kind, women in the hobby, whether it's miniatures or people painting or playing games. But if you want to check out some awesome women in the hobby, look up Darcy Bono Creations, check out Jamie Daggers, check out Witty Goblin, check out Zambies.
Yeah.
There's so many out there.
Yeah.
Just go check them out. They're all incredible painters. They're all incredible people. Yeah, for sure. Firmly convinced Bellacore I'm working on right now is a she. I think Bellacore is an it. Or
I want to talk
they.
paints. I want to talk paints again. I want to go
Let's
back.
talk paints.
So one of the things that I was impressed with Army Painter was after the release of the initial speed paints.
Mm-hmm.
Talk me through that process and all of the fallout from that.
I don't like to call it fallout. I think that's the wrong word to use, right? So
Okay.
I still believe in the first speed paint product. It did everything that we wanted it to do. Our goal with it was to make a one coat painting solution, and I think that we did that. And I think that we made the best damn one on the market. It was consistent across color. It didn't create splotches, and when it was used that way, it was perfect. And the problem is when you get too close to a product, you don't realize what other people want. We wanted to develop a one coat paint solution, but what the community wanted was a fast base coat solution or a glaze solution. And I think when you look at a product like some other one coat solutions out there, maybe they were better suited to the glazing techniques and to these other purposes, where ours was meant to be a one coat paint solution. So we came out and did something, but the expectation from the community was that they wanted us to do something else. Now, when we set out to do 2.0, it was because we wanted to go expand to 90 colors or 89 colors. Right after we launched with 23, we felt that was enough. When we launched with 23, retailers and customers were like, well, when are more coming? When are we going to have more paints? So we always knew after that initial release and after it was very successful, and that's the thing, it was our most successful release up until that point. So the fallout that we see, I think, was a very vocal minority because the sales were supporting that it was a good product. And when we went to change the formula, that's when people came out of the woodworks and were like, well, wait, we like it. We like it because it does this thing. So then we were in this predicament. Well, what do we do? Do we leave it or do we change it? And ultimately we decided, since we are the Army Painter, right? We wanted to make a product that people could use it, that was easier, that was more robust, that was a one coat paint solution, but also a fast base coat solution. Also, so at the end of the day, we're really happy that we got to this point, but I don't look at 1.0 and their initial release as a failure by any stretch of the imagination. It did exactly what we wanted it to do. We just missed the mark a little bit on the other things that the community wanted it to be.
Yeah, and that's really what I was talking about, is that I like the fact that the speed of how you guys took it, and then was like, okay, well, we're going to work on that, and then all of a sudden, boom, 2.0 comes out, and I'm like, wow, blimey, that was quick.
I mean,
so that for me,
it wasn't just us, right? So like, I mean, yeah, of course, you got to praise Thomas. He is such a great product developer, great artist, and Jonas, who is one of our founders, who's now retired. That was kind of his last project before he finally, closed the door. But also we had the paint development team. We had Dana Howe, we had Watch It Paint It, we had Brent from Goobertown Hobbies there to kind of act as community ambassadors and voice what they wanted from the range. So having their direct ear to help us was insanely beneficial. The range wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for them. And if it wasn't for all the people that, emailed us. I mean, we opened up our feedback at thearmypainter.com email a few months before that, and we received thousands and thousands and thousands of emails. And recording, like going back to speed paint, the top two things, number one was not that they wanted the formula fixed. Number one was that they wanted more colors. Number two was that they wanted the formula fixed, but there was a large discrepancy between the two. So yeah, I like to say that we've grown a lot. When I was with the company, we were less than 20 people when I first started. Now we are probably close to 80, maybe a little bit over 80.
Nice.
We've been over 100, but kind of worked our way backwards during different seasons and efficiencies being built into the company, yada, yada. I like to say that we're a big company, as big as some others in our industry. I like to say that we punch above our weight class, and we're small enough to turn on a dime still. We can still react. We make all of the products in-house. Obviously with the exception of tools and brushes, we don't do this, but all of the paints are done in-house or with our lab. And, Thomas right now is at our lab spending a week working on some things. And, we are able to move pretty quickly when we need to.
You don't appear to be a small company for the sheer volume of stuff that you have available out there. So although it is quite a large company, so to say that you're only about 80 strong, 20 strong 5, 6, 7 years ago is quite astounding. Do they just work 24/7?
No, I mean, so I think that there's a lot of things. It's going back to our fill rates, right? We work really hard to produce. That's a good thing. Having that stock and having that trust in the retailer from the retailers is good for our business. It's good for the customer too. But on top of that, Bo and Jonas, our founders, really understood retail, and they understood that the key to success was having a strong retail foundation. And they understood what it took, because Jonas was a retailer. He owned stores, and they also worked at Games Workshop, and they were sales reps for Games Workshop back in the day. I think it was called Northern Europe, which is basically like Germany and Scandinavia. And so they understood the needs of retail, and they've always catered to the independent retailer. So having that trust and that infrastructure really helped as we grew the company with new product ranges, and then our marketing initiatives got bigger because we had such a solid groundwork. You know what I mean? Such a solid foundation at the retail level. So I think that's where, because I had the same feeling too. Like when I first went to the factory, Bo says I was the 7th employee. I think I was more along the lines of like 14 or 12 or something like that. But Bo says 7. We'll meet in the middle. Let's say I was around the 10th, after a 10th employee, right? So when I went into the factory, it was both bigger than I thought and smaller than I thought at the same time. But very quickly after that, we were growing. After my second year at the company, not even the second, maybe a year and a half mark, we moved to a new facility, and within months, that's right when COVID happened. Within months, we doubled our business.
And that's the thing as well. That's roughly just when I get back into Warhammer and painting was COVID. So unless Warhammer and Games Workshop spoke to Papa Nurgle, it was perfect timing really for all the painting companies, because with nothing to do. So many people came back to the hobby in about 2019, 2020. We had a guy on last year called Dave versus Shark, who's also stateside. He hadn't painted at all in his life up until COVID happened. So for a company, for the likes of Army Painter and Citadel and Green Stuff World and all that sort of stuff, it must have been a blessing in disguise and just at the right time.
It was, so the pandemic definitely helped our business, right?
Yeah.
But I think it helped the industry as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But I think where we really came out rosy through the pandemic is, again, going back to our stock levels, right? So we were petrified when the pandemic happened. You know, Bo thought that he was going to have to shut the business down. He thought that he was going to have to lay everybody off. He was petrified. And that's when we had our second paint machine come in, and he's like, I have an idea. We're going to do hand sanitizer out of this thing. I can keep my people working because now they're considered necessary. So he was able to keep the business running, keep his people, because there was uncertainty. Who knew what was going to happen?
Yeah.
Was the government going to send everybody home? You know, what was going to happen? So being able to be up and running and produce hand sanitizer, which we didn't make a bunch of money, we actually probably lost a bunch of money doing, but keeping the people working so that when like 2 months later after the pandemic, like after the shutdown happened and people started placing orders, we had product.
Yeah.
And then we had people working to continue to replenish that product. And I don't know that all of our competitors could say the same thing at that time. So we were definitely fortunate, but you know, as Bo and I like to say, like, there's no such thing as luck. Like, we put ourselves in that position to be successful. We were fortunate for sure, that in that circumstance, we were in the right place, right time, and we were prepared to handle everything.
And also, hand sanitizer is also good for cleaning your brushes as well.
Is it?
Yeah, Mike Mons, who is a Twitch streamer, Dungeons and Dragons painter, he swears by it, and it actually does quite a good job to get rid of the grime and that and about your brush. And then you give it a good rinse with water, because it is actually really good.
It is alcohol, so I mean that probably plays a big role in it. But
another question on painting. Sorry, mine's just going to be fully paint orientated.
Go for it.
That's it. One of the things, going back to the pandemic, that I was impressed with, and I've talked to other paint manufacturers about it as well, that are envious of you guys, is your distribution and your, as you were saying, the availability of your product. Alex Vallejo, I met him a few years ago, and that was his #1 issue of getting decent distribution of Vallejo paints across the United States. It's been ongoing for the last 10-15 years for him, is the concern of having a good distribution network. How did, with when you came on board, Army Painter was dotted around. What's the sort of business plan, or where did you look at to make it as accessible as possible for small local game stores to be able to get hold of your product? Is there like a dedicated team, or
well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We've got a great sales and customer service team to start, but I think really, and they do a great job of taking care of our distribution and retail partners 1,000,000,000%. But I think the key here is that it's very difficult to have distribution if you don't have product available to distribute.
Yeah.
We have the product to distribute. So, and that's the key, I think, difference between us and some of the other brands that you're talking about is, you know, it's one thing to sell a retail rack and get that rack in somebody's store. It's another thing to be able to keep it stocked for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but definitely some paint brands struggle, and especially in North America. So that's the difference, man. I mean, we take it very seriously. That's a piece of real estate, and I turned my camera, but my 3-year-old is now doing ballet routine in the floor right now. But you know, when you put that 2-foot, 3-foot piece of sales support, that POS, that rack in somebody's store, that needs to make that retailer money, right? It needs to be profitable for them. If you have a rack sitting in your store and it's only partially filled because you can't stock it, that's dead space. It's dead inventory, right? And I've worked for other paint brands in this industry, and I can tell you that that's the struggle. I mean, I've been to trade shows where I received a display rack, you know, where I'm supposed to rep for this company, and it's only partially full. Like that's, you know, so I think it really comes down to the fact that we have a really talented team in our production at number 10 and in our warehouse. These people are such hard workers, and we are able to not just create a demand for the product through our marketing, but meet the demand of people at the other side of our marketing when they do want to place those orders, whether they're the end consumer, the hobbyist, or the retailer.
Yeah, I do think it spoke volumes to me that talking to people that own local game stores, they had no problem in getting your stuff. And it does speak volumes when you have your product, especially right next to Games Workshop paints, Vallejo paints, and they're half empty, half, you know, they look a state. They don't look right, you know, with half of the stock not being there.
There's few things more beautiful in this hobby than walking in and to any game store and seeing fully stocked paint racks.
Yeah.
It's the rainbow of potential, you know what I mean? But when that's empty, it's depleting and kind of depressing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you always want to give people that feeling. You want to see, and I'm looking behind the camera right now. It's how I have my airbrush colors like arranged on the wall. It's just very pretty and pleasing to look at.
Is as an artist, having it all lined up in nice, you know, color coordinated from dark to light and all flowing nicely. It's beautiful.
I just redid my whole setup last week.
Yeah, I've got to try that, and it lasts about 30 seconds till I need to find a colour, and I'm just like gorilla hands try to find that. Just lifting the containers down with all my paints. I just blindly clot it like a gorilla, try to get a banana. One of the questions I was going to ask you, and it's slightly about army painter and stuff. How did you get the job then? Like, if you're based in Denmark, were you headhunted or?
No. It's actually funny. So I was at an industry trade show. So it was one of the distributors in the United States open house event, and I was there repping for another paint brand, and I'll actually never forget it. I was there, and I had a retailer who is now a very good friend of mine. His name is Greg Steiner. He owns Hobbytown, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Greg is a great guy. And Greg was the first customer to walk up to that booth and pointing his finger, screaming, "I cannot get black paint from you. How do you expect me to sacrifice, blah, 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 blah. Why can't I get black paint? It's the #1 selling paint, you know." And I had to apologize profusely. But before Greg had come and accosted me at the booth, I was just doing a lap and looking, and I saw this really impressive booth, and it was clean. It was very Scandinavian, you know, nice aluminum metal framing and big lights. And then there was two tall gentlemen wearing very nice tailored white dress shirts with the red burgundy Army Painter logo, the red stitching. And it was Bo and Maz, who was still with the company. And, you know, I went up and shook their hand and said, you know, your booth is gorgeous. I wish ours looked like that. And I think Bo sized me up a little bit, you know, because he saw who I was wearing on my shirt and what are you doing over here? And we had a very good conversation. We exchanged cards, and I thought things were going in a different direction with the company that I was consulting with, and they just didn't pan out to go in that direction. And I got an email from Bo, or I can't remember if I emailed him first or he emailed me, and basically saying, "Well, we should meet. Let's talk." So we met up a couple months later, and I've been with the company ever since, and I haven't looked back. I believe this company. I love it. I'm really proud of what I've been able to contribute over the past several years.
Now, for another 50,000 paint questions, back to Sam.
Yeah.
sorry. I know it's very, very focused, but I'm just generally, you know, interested in that side of things. So from where you're talking, I don't know who you used to work for, but I can kind of guess with the question of when are you going to get more of that black paint in potentially as who it was that you worked for. If you could replicate that black paint primer that potential company did do beforehand,
no, it
wasn't that company.
You're thinking of the wrong company.
Okay, that's fine. All right, that's fine. No, because honestly, P3 Privateer Press is the paint company that I love their black primer. Their black primer was one of the smoothest, cost-effective primers out there on the market. And when they ran into issues of production, I said to them, can I get a case of your black paint? And they were like, we actually don't have any more of it. And I started going round and grabbing as many cans of that as possible. But it was such a sad sort of story, that whole sort of side of things. And they've kind of died off. They've not caught up with like guys like you, Duncan, Monument, GW, those sorts of, that's who I'm really. It's difficult. I use a lot of different paints, as you probably do. No, you don't.
I
Are
don't.
you army painter straight? Okay.
I mean, I test everything.
Okay.
But if you look at my desk, there is 2 effects paints and 2 inks, because we don't presently make inks that are not army painter products. Okay. And if there's anything else, it's only here because we've been testing it. But I tend to clear that stuff off.
That's good. It's good to know. Like you're like I am a little bit like I'll have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and mostly my paints at Monument Hobbies. I do love their stuff through the airbrush and painted on. I'm impressed, and I know Jason decently well who runs Monument, and I like the way they go about stuff. But
yeah.
As far as like going forward for you guys, are you looking to break into the inks? Are you looking to break into more effects-based paints? Are you looking to go down the sort of expanding the range as everybody else is doing to compete with them?
So, there's a, as I like to say, like we're a game company without a game, right? And we just happen to make, paint solutions to make hobbying easier, faster, more effective. Hey, Ray, can you get out of here? It's my 3-year-old. That's my little demon princess right there. Hey, go in the other room.
Don't worry about it. Like, we've had Sam's child come in with a Nerf dart up his nose. We've had kids. I've had my granddaughter trying to come on and say hello to everybody. So don't worry about the kids ruining or potentially gate crashing. We're totally fine with that.
I'm not worried about her gate crash in this call. It's what she will destroy while I'm focused on the call. So going back to the question about where are we going, I would love to do. I mean, we dabbled a little bit with texture in some of the effects paints with the Fanatic release. I would love to dabble in more texture and effects and scenery type stuff. I would love to work a little bit more with inks. Maybe there's an artist range in the future. We're fortunate that we work with some really talented people now, like Sam, and of course, Uncle Adam, Eric, Phil, and many others, Metters Miniatures, and they've provided a lot of insight into the way that we develop products and the products that they want, right? Like, what are the things that they're missing from the Army Painter range? So I think as we grow as a company in the next couple of years, you can expect to see more of that. There was another part of your question, though, Sam. I can't recall. Did I miss the part?
Maybe
the part A or the part B of the question?
Paint ranges. I'm trying to think now what it was.
What to do, Sam? Right? What I'm going to do, right? I'm limited to like 1 hour videos here, right? So I'm going to pause this and cancel this. Sam, you think of another 30,000 questions. I'm going to stop this video here and I'll start another one and it'll be part 2. Is that okay with you, gents?
Cool.
And then when it goes on YouTube, it'll be edited seamlessly by myself. And it'll be as well one big episode. Okay. So I'll be back in literally 30 seconds, folks. Join us for part 2. 2 of the Inquisition with this week's guest, Tactical Painter and special co-host, Warp Studios. Hopefully Sam can remember his 15-part question, which he just asked Adam. And we'll just get everybody to join back in, and we'll be rocking and rolling and ready to go. So yeah, it's bloody raining here again. So, thanks again for joining us, folks. Usually I get a 30-second countdown, but because Sam asked a 50th question, I thought this was the best time to restart for the second part of the show. So Sam, what was the 17-part question that you were asking Adam there
I,
before
have,
we
I
left?
honestly can't remember. It's so
So
embarrassing. I went off
you,
on one.
you were going somewhere. I think there's something important to touch on, right? Because you were talking about these different ranges and P3 and Monument and
Yeah.
Army Painter Workshop. The really cool thing, and I say this as a company and a person who makes these paints and is involved in making paints and trying to sell these paints and convince people that our paints are right for them, right? The really cool thing is that the technology of paints has gotten to the point to where not everybody just has a paint and it's like whose colors are better, right? Now we're looking at and which ones cover better and which.
Yeah. Oh, there we
We
go.
lost them. Yeah,
I
we lost them.
just remembered my question as well at that moment.
Quick, write it down.
Okay,
Write it down. What's going on here? Right. Should he still on screen? Can you see him on screen?
No.
No. I can still see him on screen.
There is a large storm coming across the Gulf at the moment, so he might have got a bit of storm going where he is.
It booted me.
Oh, there we are. We're back.
Sorry about that. It booted me somehow.
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
So what I was saying is that I think the really cool thing is that you've got, it's easy to see, and in my testing, of all the paint ranges that are out there now, there's different qualities and characteristics in the paint ranges. So if there's not something from brand X, you'll probably find it in brand Y or brand Z. And also, just the level of quality has gone so far up with brands like Monument pushing the envelope, with the new Fanatic range coming out, that the options that the customer has nowadays, whether it's color choice or paint characteristic, coverage, vibrancy, whatever it might be, they are at a wealth of options and opportunity there, and I think that's really cool.
And that is bang on, because, like as you said, you have just released all your new paints, and Green Stuff World coincidentally are concentrating solely on inks this now as well, and it's just like this perfect storm. There's like feels like the likes of Citadel and other brands are kind of being left behind. Like, you are like two big companies.
I think it's a mistake to say the Games Workshop is left behind. They are the biggest company in our industry by a long shot.
Oh, of course, but I'm just saying, like, the fact that you relaunched a lot of your paints in Green Stuff World, have went down the ink route as well. In this period of time, it feels as though like Games Workshop, and it seems as though they are actually taking paints back. A lot of their spray tins have been withdrawn, so maybe they're going to be throwing out some new primers at some point. I meant it in that kind of, yeah.
Maybe aerosols are just tough. They're dangerous goods. They're tough they're just difficult to ship. I don't know how big box stores like what do you guys have? Halfords, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
In the UK? Walmart, Target. I don't know how they're able to distribute aerosols as easily as they are, because it's very difficult in our industry.
So I'm just going to step off topic a wee bit and let Sam get a 80,000-part question that he'll forget half of it.
I did remember my second part, and you were close to it, because I was basically saying I wanted to point out the metallics on the Fanatic range are phenomenal. Yeah. Love them. They are my favourite part of that range for coverage and just how to use them and how to blend. The other question I was going to sort of say that kind of went on from that is looking at other companies around the world that are I know that the Army Painter is obviously based in Northern Europe, but the kind of Italian, Spanish developers of paint like Chimera, Vallejo, and those sorts of things, they really haven't. Well, Vallejo have kind of tried to rebrand a little bit on their products and their game color and those sorts of things, and trying to. It seems like Vallejo at one point was the leader in the, or one of the leaders in the hobby side of things and scale modeling. And they've kind of realized the potential of the D&D
Hmm.
and hobbyists out there as well. And it feels like they're trying to play a little bit of catch up with you guys, because when I first heard of Army Painter, it was through like Warlord Games, and it was like, you know, with the military modeling side of things. That's how I first heard of Army Painter. So that caught my attention anyway, because I do a little bit of that as well. But it seems like you guys have just steamrolled ahead, and really put into a place a lot more to encompass other hobbyists out there. And other traditional hobbyist companies like Vallejo, Chimera, Scale 75 as well is another one. They really are trying to catch up with you guys, with and others in the market at the moment, which is great for you. It's
Oh yeah,
there's a
it's
huge amount of growth.
it's so I think it's a couple things. Like we've worked really hard to get to where we're at, and we didn't get here by accident. It's because we've had great leadership, we've had great ideas, and we've supported retail really well. We've supported our customers really well. I like to say that nobody gets rich in this industry. I mean, sure that there's some people that make some, a good chunk of change, but I'm not out here driving an Aston Martin counting the bills because I made a good YouTube video. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We do this because we love this shit at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the big key differences with our company compared to some others. Obviously, there's some great companies out there that are definitely led by the passion, at 1000%. But I think going back to what you're saying, for 30 some odd years, you basically had Games Workshop and Citadel Paints, coat to arms back then before it was
Yeah.
HMG, and then Vallejo was the only other option, realistically. You go into a train store or something like that, and it's like, oh, this is also an acrylic paint that I could potentially use. You know what I'm saying? Where they didn't really have any other competition other than Workshop. I mean, they were the only ones really servicing tabletop and wargaming. So when you have a company like us come into the fold, and that throws the question mark out as well, it's like, oh, this is a game company that makes paints, where Vallejo tends to be more scale model focused. I don't know that it was disruptive. I wasn't with the company at the time, but I imagine that it was a little bit disruptive for the status quo, the people that have been there for a while. And going out and building a business, I've done it before I started this company with my own business. It's not easy. And I know Jonas and Bo very well. I consider them very, very close friends. I've heard the whole story. Building this business to what it is today was never easy. Nobody got struck by lightning twice and clicked their heels, and all of a sudden we had a successful company. It was through blood, sweat, and tears, and beers, and a lot of failures, but also a lot of successes. But I think that what you were saying before, we were like the first real alternative to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Now Chimera, in scale, even AK to an extent, they're more scale. The AK and scale are more scale focused. Chimera is more showcase painting focused. Their paints they exist at the razor point, the razor's edge of technical, how do I say, technical requirement, right?
Yeah.
I like to say, like, do either of you play golf?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Sam, I like to say, like, certain paint companies, their products are like Tiger Woods prototype tailor-made P7 TW forged muscle back blades.
Okay.
I'm a good golfer.
Yeah.
If I tried to hit that club, I would probably break my wrist, and the ball would go 5 feet in front of me, and there'd be a big chunk of the earth taken out of the ground, because that club is made for the best golfer in the world, right? And there are paints out there that I think are made for painters of very, very high skill level and technical capability. And then there's paints that exist somewhere in between. I like to say that our paints are really nice forged cavity back, with a nice clean leading edge. It can perform. You could shape the shot. You could pull off the blends. You can thin them to glaze like consistencies. but there's just enough forgiveness in there that if you're a gamer who's just trying to slap paint
Yeah.
on a miniature and get a unit done for a tournament, or you're a beginner painter, that you can get away with not possessing the technical capability of say a Sam lens.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is Army Painter are the PXG kind of equivalent, maybe. Is that where you're going, wanting to be, or are
Ping.
you the tightest? Yeah, Ping. Okay.
Ping,
Okay.
maybe Ping.
Yeah.
Research and design, approachable, built for the player,
Yeah.
not for the pro necessarily,
Okay.
but the pros can still use it.
Yeah.
Ping is approachable.
What
They sponsor a lot of collegiate.
what clubs do you use personally?
Ping Woods,
Okay.
Odyssey Jailbird putter, and obscure brands, sub 70 TA3 muscleback irons.
Okay. I play Titleist AP1s as my irons. I've got Scotty Cameron putter, and believe it or not, I'm really reluctant because I love it a bit. So I've got some old Nike Tiger Woods woods.
Yeah.
That are phenomenal, and I absolutely love them still. So yeah,
I played almost a full bag of Nike clubs when I was in college. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough about the nerdy stuff. Let's talk miniatures and paint.
So, see when you're doing, how do you balance your work from your hobby to your personal life? Because we like to ask about yourself as well. It's not just about Army Painter.
I'm in a growth period myself, right? So for a long time I was kind of a lone wolf. I plugged in where I was needed. If they needed me in sales, I would do that. If they needed me in marketing, I would do that. If they needed me to help, that's what I did. And for the first time, the past year and a half, I've had a staff. So I'm learning to be a manager of people, not just manager of projects. And on top of that, I've got 2 young kids. My wife is a business owner, professional. She's also a major in our Air Force. So we live very busy lives. I'm working and putting things in motion now to help have more. Granted, the Army Painter doesn't demand any extra time out of me whatsoever, right? I was late diagnosed ADHD. When I get latched onto a project, I have a hard time letting it go. That's me. In fact, before my second daughter was born, my KPIs one year, I sat down with Bo and he says, you need to take 5 weeks vacation next year. And if you don't, you'll be reprimanded. And I said, well, great, 5 weeks. I've never had 5 weeks vacation. I have got the baby coming, so I can use it to that. And he's like, no. I said, 5 weeks vacation, you still get your paternity leave. Like I need you fresh. I need you to be relaxed. So fortunately, the company promotes a very solid work-life balance. But I can't stop myself sometimes when there's a project that I really like to work on and want to work on. But I'm learning each week to better manage my time when I have half my team in Denmark and half my team in the States. So I have designated days where I'm up early, Mondays and Thursdays. I'm up very early in the morning with meetings, and I usually extend those days to a normal end around 4:30. And theoretically, my Tuesdays and Wednesdays should be much lighter days. And I'm working towards being more proficient at that and really regulating my time spent. So as you can see next to me, I was up at 3 o'clock this morning because my wife was going on a trip. So it's going to be 3 early mornings this week. So I have this call. I've got a bunch of miniatures on my desk. I'm going to paint 2 units of jackals for my World Eaters Army. So I'm forcing myself to step away from the computer a little bit, always be there in case my team needs me, but to not spend too much time. But what I'd really love, is to get in a routine where I could play golf once a week. The work isn't preventing that; it's the kids that are preventing that.
Do you find the golf is like we're big advocates for mental health, and thanks to your wife for her service, being a former military man myself, like the paintings helped me with my journey that I'm going on. I'm going through quite a personal journey. I'm going through a journey with ADHD and post-traumatic stress disorder from some stuff experienced back in the military. So I find that the painting helps me relax and unwind. Do you find that's what golf does for you as opposed to the painting, or is it both?
I think in some ways it does, right? Um,
Oh, you've muted.
am I
No,
muted? Am I here?
no, you're fine now. You kind of
Okay.
glitched out there.
I had a phone call come in, so I had to shut it off. Um, so, mental health is something that's very near and dear to me. We talked a little bit about this, Dunk, in the chat. It's something I've had my own struggles with. I talked about it in great deal when I had my podcast. If anybody wants to listen to an old, outdated podcast about a guy who wanted to win a grand tournament, it's called the Best General Podcast. It should still be up somewhere on the internet. I pay $5 a month to host it. So, um, um, I think miniature hobby is for a lot of men specifically has been a great tool for their mental health. Um, it's a great way to unwind and kind of put away the pressures that we tend to bottle up inside. You know what I mean? Golf is great because I can be out on a golf course and it's totally acceptable for me to call myself a bunch of just dirty, nasty things, where I can't do that in in the middle of a meeting at 4:30 in the morning with my team back in Denmark. Um, I'm a very self-deprecating person. It's part of my sense of humor. My wife really gets on me about it because she doesn't like it because there is an element of that, and if anybody else at home has ADHD, you do tend to have self-esteem issues. You tend to have a lot of what's it called, like imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
right? You believe that you're not worthy of the things that you do or you get or you receive, and it's just you convince yourself and your brain convinces yourself that you're just a piece of shit, right? That's at the end of the day, it can do that.
Well,
And
we feel this when we do that when we do this podcast, like because like I'm only new in the
yeah,
hobby. The other guy that does it's been in the hobby for years. So like asking people like yourselves and even Sam to come on, you feel like an imposter and you feel as though like you're always having to thank them coming on, saying, "Oh, thanks so much for coming on." And
but the thing is that we're just people. Sam is just a cool dude. Mamacon is in the chat right now, and he's one of the biggest YouTubers in our industry, and he's watching your chat, your video right now. How freaking cool is that?
yeah,
Right? The reality is they're just people. The first time I met Duncan, he was having breakfast by himself at a convention. Duncan is just a nerdy hobbyist. He just happens to be a really great on camera and a really good person.
oh, thanks very much.
Really,
Like
yeah, you Duncan too. There's also another Duncan that you might have heard of, Duncan Rhodes. He's also just a great human
yeah.
being. Who I owe a debt of gratitude for something that he did for a very close friend. And the end of the day, we're all drawn to this for a reason, so you deserve to be here, kind of thing. It kind of goes back to what we were saying at the first part of the show. Like, we need more people at the table, whether it's the hobby desk or the gaming table, and whether it's women, whether it's a person of color, whether it's somebody who's different than you, I, or anybody else. Like, that's a good thing. We all deserve to be here. So just because you just started hobbying in the pandemic doesn't mean you're any less
Oh
deserving to
yeah,
be
yeah.
here than me or anybody else. And yes, Duncan, you are a beautiful man.
But yeah, I think the hobby helps because like, we've had a few like military guys on as well, and they've all said that it helps them just go back to when they were a child and just focus on something. And I think probably a lot of military people probably do have undiagnosed ADHD or autism. It's just that hyper focus that you get. Like I get obsessed with things. So yeah.
I
Sam,
think
get any more? Sorry.
there's something that's been very helpful for me, and oddly enough, like I had heard of it, but I thought it was like science fiction. And then you kind of find out that like a lot of Tool songs, like Maynard writes a bit about shadow work. So I started doing some reading about shadow work, and it's all about like serving your inner child, right? Um, I discovered this when I was a child, and I'm going to be 40 next month. Um, you know, I feel like miniature painting is serving my inner child, right?
Yeah.
I am playing with toys, really cool, badass demon princes and you know, demon engines and, you know, crazy stuff. But these are toys at the end of the day, and I'm painting them. And I am privileged enough to do this for work. I get to serve my inner child every day just by waking up and sitting at this desk. So yes, to answer your question more directly, I do think that painting is good for my mental health.
Yeah,
And you find it helps your mental health, Sam?
well, I was going to say, playing golf doesn't help my mental health at all. It drives me completely bonkers. But it does depend. The thing with golf is, and the thing that I can draw a similarity with golf and painting is, you can labour away, right? And it is still a great escape from whatever you will go back to. So if you've got a crap job, whatever you've got, painting for a few hours allows you to escape. It's escapism. Getting on a golf course, even if you absolutely hack your way around the golf course, is still better than going back to the office and doing that. I put limits on myself. I play off of a handicap of about 8,
Yeah,
right?
it's a good handicap.
And well, my first thing was trying to get down to single-figured handicap, and that was where I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to try test myself with. Similar to painting, I wanted to go to Golden Demon and get a finalist pin. Done that way back, and I was like, brilliant. But now the issue that I've got is I see the levels of painting, like Katerina Gorshka, and some of the other fantastic painters. There's too many to mention. When I go and look through the cabinets at Golden Demon, that I'm like, well, shite, am I going to be able to get a finalist pin now? You know, that's my goal every time.
Yeah,
Is to try and get a finalist pin, because the quality of the painting is going up so much every year. If you look back 20, 30 years ago, like back to the 90s, and you know, like
the piece that I entered would have won a Golden Demon 25 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and that's how crazy it is. But I love the fact that people that are painting, actually artists, are helping all of us improve and go forward with the quality of the paint we've got. But it also falls in with companies like yourselves, like Monument, like GW, pushing the boundaries of technology and bringing in a lot of stuff. You know, I'm kind of grateful because I grew up like not in the fantasy side of things. Was scale modeling, like Tamiya and Airfix models when I first got into it. And my dad's ex-military, so it was like he was great. He was telling me all the story about all these tanks and aircraft and all this sort of stuff. And I was used to stuff like, you know, and I Microsol, Microset, those sorts of things for putting on decals. They've been around for years.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, those sorts of things are coming out for us to use, and becoming more accessible for people in the hobby. And it is stuff like that, technology-wise, that's improving everything for us on a daily basis. So I love that.
I also think that there's another parallel to golf that we can take away and apply to miniature painting, and even gaming. And I used to preach this when I was playing competitively and coaching Team USA. There is no such thing as a perfect game of Warhammer 40K. Okay, when we measure, we are never measuring exactly 8 inches. Right? It's impossible. It's always an error, right? And the rules are so, I don't want to say bloated, but there's so much that can be left to interpretation. We're never playing the game correctly. We are never going to play a perfect game of golf. There's no such thing. And if there was, it's unachievable, right? Nobody is going to score an 18, right? Unless you're Kim Jong-un, who apparently did, the one and only time he played golf. You know, so there is no such thing as a perfect round of golf. Golf is a game of minimizing your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Golf is a game, when you're playing really well, you're playing really boring golf because you're limiting your mistakes. You're playing away from the pin.
Yeah.
You're playing against your weaknesses. And painting is kind of the same thing. And one of the things that I think is actually improved, because I'm an army painter through and through, right? I think that I'm a good army painter. I've won awards, you know, and I think in terms of army painting, I think I'm up there. Not as good as Thomas, but I'm up there. and I've never done showcase painting or competition painting until I just randomly entered some stuff at Adepticon Golden Demon this year, and it was stuff that one of them was an army miniature. It was a orc squigosaur boss thing that my daughter loves. But one of the things that's helped me to improve as a painter, coming as an army painter who's trying to paint better, is recognizing that I am not Sam. I am not some of these incredible painters out there. I am not Mamikon. I am not. I am not. Let's just name off some really good painters. I can name a whole bunch, but I am not a
Sergio
winner.
Yeah,
Sergio. I'm not an Alex.
Yeah.
Right. It's. I'm just not there yet. Right. And maybe I will be one day. But the thing is, and Sam wants me to come sit with him and paint a model and just copy him one day, and I would love to do it. I think that'd be a really fun exercise. But like, trying to live up to what other people and the way other people paint is not ever going to work for me. And also, I think what I found is that when I stopped trying to paint the way GW has told us, which is a great thing, it's really good. It's great for beginners to teach them how to get involved. But when I started painting outside of the prime wash, chunky highlight, then I found like I was actually improving as a painter because I was painting the way my eye saw the miniatures. So now, like, I appreciate brush strokes. I appreciate the little mistakes on the miniature because that's evidence that I painted it. It's evidence of a thing that I did.
Yeah.
I think as well.
Was,
I think if you like somebody who's only been painting properly the last 4 years, I've noticed a big step in my own progress from my paintings. I revisited a model that I painted 2 years ago, stripped it down and totally repainted it. And if you listen to people that are giving you advice and you look at the tutorials and you learn about colours, I think, and just learning those wee things, I think there's an analogy I heard, I think it was maybe a darts player said that if you put 1,000 hours of practice into something, you're going to get better. And I think that's the way miniature painting is.
I think that's actually a Tiger Woods quote.
Oh, is it? Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned, and it's probably the most difficult thing as a painter going forward, is becoming stagnant with the way that you paint models. I have really appreciated trying new stuff out. Even if it's a tiny little thing on every single model I do, whether it's texturizing differently on cloth, whether it's going an extra couple of highlight levels or a couple of extra glazes on flesh, just little things like that on every single model. If you do that, go on, you held something up now and I want to know what it is.
No, it's keep going. This is more a ADHD, a reminder to bring this up in a second. Go ahead.
But yeah, little things like that. If you do that, it stops. I think it actually keeps making painting enjoyable for me because there's a great quote from man alive, I can't remember his name. He's just wrote a book about I think it's the miniature painting tutor. I think his name is. And he basically said, and you aren't finished on a model until you are 100% happy with that model. So if you look at a model that you've painted and you are not, there's just something not right about it, or you're not happy with it or whatever, you're not done. And there's a lot of people these days that are either, I don't know, maybe they just don't take it as seriously as I do sometimes, but I think I love that because now I look at a model once I've finished painting it and I'm like, am I really happy with this? And then there's a real issue in my brain, the ADHD side of me going, well, no, I'm never going to be happy. Am I ever going to be happy with this model? And is this going to win me Golden Demon Slayer Sword? And I'm like, that's the issue that I've got.
But how many people have painted their best miniature, their absolute best miniature, in their mind, the best miniature they've ever painted and didn't win a Golden Demon?
Yeah.
How many people painted an amazing miniature that never even entered it into a competition, never went on a shelf but their own? Yeah. That's like the idea of measuring. I think that's kind of the other similarity with golf. Like you're with art, any kind of art, and especially miniature painting. If you're going to compare yourself to another miniature painter, that's the wrong approach. When you're playing golf, you are playing against the course, not necessarily the person or the people. When you're painting a miniature, the only person that you should compare yourself to is yourself and the last miniature that you painted.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's you're gonna see some videos come out with the factory team talking about some of these things, and actually Phil and Sam and Uncle Adam, Eric all gave some really great insights to this, and it goes along with this topic. And I don't want to ruin it because I want you to go to our YouTube channel and watch them when they happen. YouTube/The Army Painter. Subscribe while you're there. But it's about managing expectations too, right? I started this World Eaters Army with the intent that I was going to try and bring this to SM Battle Reports No Retreat. I was accepted to play this year. I've tried for 8 years, and I was accepted. Unfortunately, I had to bail out because something has come up and I can't go, which is a real bummer. And I apologize greatly to the guys at SM Battle Reports. They're amazing. If you haven't seen any of their tutorials, if you haven't seen anything about No Retreat, you need to go look at it right now. But I wanted to have this painted up, and I want it to be everything to as close to like a showcase standard for me. And that's awesome, and it's really fun. But then you realize, even if there's only 50 models in the Army, that's going to take a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So what are your expectations? I got into these, why I held this up, and I was going to use only speed paint on the Jackals because they're chaff, right? They're going to be taken off the board quicker than you put them on the board, right? Yeah. But then I start looking at the miniatures and I'm like, God, they got muscles and really broad surfaces, and I could just do a little bit more work, right? Like I almost can't contain myself. So I have to shift my expectations, right? Yeah. So these aren't going to be done in 2 days. These are going to be done in probably 5 to 10 days. And that's okay, because I've altered my expectations, and I'm going to live up to my expectations. Are these going to win a Golden Demon? No, because that's not what they're for. Are they going to look really freaking good in the back ranks of my army and in a pile on my display board after they've been removed? Heck yeah. And that's cool.
Yeah. I think that's the difficulty I had with that. I didn't go to Adepticon and Golden Demon this last year because I was moving down here to Florida. But my piece that I wanted to do is Angron, and I've been working on it. I put about 90 hours into Angron at the moment.
I will start soon.
Yes. And it is one hell of a model, dude. It is a gorgeous piece. Yeah. And it looks like you've... please tell me you've not fully assembled it and you're going to be sub-assemble and painting it.
Yeah, so the... yeah, it's just...
Okay,
so
beautiful. That's cool. Yeah.
My buddy John's going to come over, and I'm going to play a 1,000-point game tonight. So I just put the one wing, the other one won't stay. But I'm also... This is basically what he's going to look like. I'm not putting the armor on him, and then I magnetize the shoulder pads. So when in game he has the army-wide invol up, invol save up, I'll just put the shoulder pads on. Yeah. And then if the next turn I don't use that power, I'll take them off. But this is how I'm going to do them, and everything is pre-heresy colors. Okay, so white and blue, nice.
Do you get to play many games yourself?
Not anymore. I used to. When I was playing competitively, I'd play at least one time a week, and I'd play usually 2 to 3 games. But and with my buddy John, who's coming out, he was like my sparring partner. Without him, I could never have won the GT that I set out to win. So John Stovall, if you're out there, I love you, buddy. But changes in his life, changes in my life. My focus isn't as much on competitive play. Now it's about building the cool, fun armies that I like to build. And just spending a little bit more time painting them.
And how do you think that the YouTube channel has helped Army Painter get out there more as well? Because I think, apart from maybe Citadel, like not many of the painting brands throw a lot of videos out there.
I definitely think it helps. I mean, it's oddly enough, the videos that are more successful on our channel have nothing to do with painting. They're Bo shaking his ass. They're us talking about hand sanitizer. They're usually the videos that are about the culture of the company more so than the products. That's why I said kind of at the beginning, I think the loyalty that we receive from our customers is more based on how we do things and not what we actually do. But it's definitely helped. And I think that right now, fortunately I have an incredible team, between Lassa and Danny, our two videographers, Thomas, of course, and Stefan. And then you guys look at the blog. I mean, go look at the blog. Tyler Mengel, man, it's Tyler freaking Mengel I was able to hire him as our social media specialist, and he is absolutely freaking incredible. I'm very privileged. I have a dream team of people. When I started my bike company a long time ago, and I was learning how to be a company leader, right? The greatest thing that you could ever do as a leader is hire people that are better at your job than you are. When I started with this company, I started as the quote unquote media director, and I was working with content creators and channels like yourself and events, and helping to develop product and making our videos at the time and doing our social media. But as we scaled, I couldn't do it all, and I couldn't do it all well. And then you look at the people that are there. Thomas is our dedicated studio painter, and he is incredible, far better painter than I am, can do things that I'll never be able to do. Stefan is right there with them. Lassa and Danny both are far better videographers than I ever was, and I went to university for it. Mm-hmm. They're incredible. Kat and Caleb, when it comes to events and teaching painting and doing seminars, there's nobody better in this industry than those two. And then you talk about like social media specialist, like Tyler is one of the greatest online painters that's ever lived. And he's just an all around great guy. I'm very fortunate that there's this team around me that has helped me to create the things that I've wanted to create for this company at a level that I would never have been able to do on my own. And I think that the customers enjoy it and the viewers like it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to say, like, and that's one of the reasons why I asked you to come on. Like, me and you only started chatting because I reached out to a load of companies asking for sponsorship, but I knew deep down that I wasn't going to get any sponsorship, but it was a way in to actually bring somebody in from these companies onto the podcast. Because we're predominantly, we like to, as Sam will probably testify, we like to bring on people that have got a low amount of followers that me and Casey find interesting. We love their paintwork, and we always try and get alternative people on. Like, we've had Duncan Rose on, we've had Peach on, we've had Graham McNeil on, and now we've had you on. But we also want to bring on the people that don't have a big following, so it's more like them we bring on. So I thank you for reaching.
Are you saying I don't have a big following? Thanks,
well,
man. Appreciate you.
I'm going to grow your following now, so you can.
I just called you pretty like 30 minutes ago.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we like to bring on people like yourselves that are known within the industry, but predominantly, like, we like to bring on people that we find cool as well. And I really do thank you for like responding to your emails and the back and forth that we had to come on, because like, as a small channel that's unknown, to have somebody of your stature to come on again to our podcast is amazing for us as well. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, this is the easiest thing that I can do, is dedicate a portion out of my work week and even my private time to do this, because our hobbies are amazing, and the people that do it are awesome, and we all start somewhere, right? Our company is to the point now where the amount of inquiries we get for sponsorship is just unattainable. It's absolutely ridiculous from where we started to where we are today. But we are taking a look at how we can better cater this influx of requests for sponsorship. Because as our industry grows, of course, there's going to be more content creators, there's going to be more YouTubers, there's going to be more painters, there's going to be more podcasts, and events, and we want to be able to support as many of them as possible. But everybody starts somewhere. And what I tell people all the time is that it's not always about how many followers you have.
Yeah.
Right. Especially for me, just because you've got, 400,000 followers or 200,000 followers on YouTube doesn't mean that you're a right fit for our business. It's not just about the numbers. And we have our new CEO, Henning, who I really, really like, and I'm not just sucking up. I think he and I were cut from the same cloth as to marketing approaches and leadership. But we can measure a lot of things nowadays as a business, right? I can go back and I can look at how many views and how many people watch this, and we could probably do some Google Analytics and find out how successful this was for us, right?
Yeah.
How many people bought something because I spent 2 hours with you this Wednesday afternoon or evening your time. But the reality is, you can't measure our heartbeats, and they're just as important. It's my job at the company to create those heartbeats, to instigate those heartbeats, and to cultivate them, nurture them,
Yeah.
because that's the one thing that I think our company has that no other company in this industry does, is a loyal following of really good people that love this hobby, and they love the way that we do it. They love the things that we do, and we love them back. So yeah, just because you're a little podcast that's just starting out, don't be surprised that you get people like Duncan Rhodes on. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Mamicon was in your chat.
Yeah, I know. I have actually reached out to him as well to see, to about coming on as well. But it was just so cool that, like, I send out a lot of emails and I send a lot of DMs to people as well, to, like, because I always want to try and get different people on, and you'll probably now get an influx of people asking you to come on their podcast now, because they've seen you on this one. So it has a kind of knock-on effect. But we always like to try and get different people on. And when Casey dropped out, the first person I thought of to bring on was Warpy, because he is, like, I always try and bring somebody on that's really knowledgeable, I'm flying solo, that knows a lot about specific things. So it was a no-brainer to ask Sam to come on because of his 30 million questions.
Do we have to give him like an exit interview? Do we have to, like, a performance
Yeah.
review?
Yeah, well, after the call, I'll give him a call and tell him how well he did. But it was just so good that, like, Sam would give up his time as well on a Wednesday afternoon to chat as well. Like, and that's what this podcast is all about. Like,
I think it's awesome, and I appreciate the hell out of you asking me to come on, and I appreciate the hell out of you sending me an email for request. It's like I said in my response, I'm following you now. I get to track your progress. Now I can be a small part of your progress, I hope.
yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that a rising tide does float all boats. When business is good for Games Workshop, it's usually good for us, which I hope it means it's good for Monument Hobbies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? That just means that there's more people at the table. Saying that again, I'm beating a dead horse, but yeah, bring on more small podcasts for us to say no or yes to, because that just means that our industry is getting bigger and there's more people that we can share what we love to do with.
Just one question on the models, and this is a question that I actually forgot to ask earlier, but I'm sorry for interjecting, Sam. The question I'm going to ask is, like, Citadel obviously are turning out a lot more models, a lot more detailed. Do you feel the models are being too detailed now? And do you think it's going to get even more detailed? I think it's plateaued now with the detail that we've got.
Are we talking specifically workshop miniatures, or are we talking?
Well, yeah, workshop miniatures. That's pretty much what we all paint, isn't it? Really. So
there's somebody who a pleasure of calling a friend who's one of the sculptors at Games Workshop, Darren, who's a great human being, and I think that the sculpts have gotten better. While they're more detailed, they're more refined. I think that they're easier to paint. I think that when, let's just say, for example, the scale of Marines went up with Primaris, and maybe this is a hot take, maybe it's not, but when the scale of Marines grew just that little bit with Primaris, quality of paint jobs at tournaments went way up because the miniatures became easier to paint. And when miniatures are easier to paint, the paint jobs look better. When the paint is better, the miniatures look better.
Yeah.
So I think that, if anything, we should be thankful. I like painting Marines now because of Primaris. I did not like painting the tiny squatty little dudes. I will say that all the details on these jackals is pretty absurd, but not as bad as some other ones. Like, the mold lines aren't as bad.
Yeah.
So I think we got to give credit where credit's due. GW make the best miniatures in the market. They're incredible. And the engineers that cut apart these models and put them on sprue, sometimes they get a little out of hand. Like, like you have like 47 pieces for just a rank and file mini. That's a little absurd sometimes, and I'm exaggerating, I know, but I mean the miniatures go together so beautifully. The mold lines for the most part are hidden or easy to clean. It's not like it used to be. I think we are so privileged, and I think, yeah, genuinely, I think the paint qualities at the lower levels of painting, which is always going to be tournament play, have just gotten better, and I think it's because of the miniatures.
Sam?
Another question, quite a humorous one actually. Had you seen Sam Lenz's breakdancing skills before you had offered him a job or not?
No, no, but I did get to see them a little bit live and in person at about 4:30 in the morning in Las Vegas, which was a really fun time.
Yeah.
I love that man. He is he's somebody that I idolize from a very far distance for a very long time. He's somebody who I thought we would never get a chance to work with. And honestly, like I was really confident about Fanatic during our development, but when I sent him about like 10 or 12 paints to test, I got real nervous because like this was for me the make or break moment. This is one of the painters, maybe the painter that I idolize the most. And if he doesn't like it, then this is a failure to me. And I will never forget I was in Denmark and I was laying in bed and it was probably pretty late, like 11:30. For me, that's late. I'm an old man. And I was getting text messages as I'm falling asleep from Sam, and he says, "Dude, I'm pissed." And I'm like, like, what happened? I'm thinking a bottle broke or something happened. I messed up. Our paints messed something up for him. I don't know. And he says, I'm painting and I keep going to get colors that I don't have yet of Fanatic. And it's pissing me off because I really wish that I had Fanatic paints in those colors. And that's when I was like, literally like sit up out of bed, fist pump, like, yes, we did it. And I still get goosebumps when I think about it. But Sam is, he's become I consider him a very dear friend. And I think he is a beautiful human being. And if you don't subscribe to his channel, if you don't buy his book from The Art of, then you're a loser. Go buy his book and subscribe because he's just the best.
Yes, I've got. I'm meeting up with him at LVO, and I'm kind of scared because he was like, "Let's do some beers," and I'm like, "Oh no, I know how it's gonna go. I really already know how it's gonna go." So yeah, if you see me hammered and live streaming at LVO, then you'll know why.
I'll probably be there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll make a great night of it, and maybe we'll get a video for my reels of you also break down on the floor.
Oh hell no, man! No. I'm older than you are now, and I will break something or I'll end up in hospital. So yeah.
I mean, nobody said why it's called breakdancing, did they? So.
Right, guys, it's as probably being the oldest man in this chat right now. It's actually near enough my bedtime now, so unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it quits there. Sam, thanks for coming on. Adam, again, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you? And if there's anything you want to plug out there, now's your time to shine.
You can find the Army Painter on all social media at the Army Painter, and of course at our website www.thearmypainter.com. And chances are, if you've got a friendly local game store nearby and they're reputable, they're already stocking our products. If you want to check them out, if you haven't already, please do. Please find us on YouTube. That's where you're going to get the best and most in-depth content from us. So please head on over there and subscribe. If you want to watch my really stupid painting videos with a little bit of a soundtrack going on in the background, I'm at tacticalpainter on Instagram, and I post there as frequently as I can. I would say if you're watching, stay tuned. This fall and next year are going to be pretty mind-blowing. If you thought Fanatic was big, and it was, we've got some really exciting things coming too.
But we would love to have you back on probably about December time so we can chat about stuff that's happened through fall and anything else coming up if you're down for that.
Consider me already penciled in.
And Sam, whilst you're here, do you want to plug yourself as well?
Don't need to, mate. To be honest with you, don't need to.
And there we go, folks. And this is why we brought Sam on. Magnanimous as always.
Good. Now, I will say, if you're around this area of the Panhandle, come and give me a shout. We'll get some golfing.
Perfect. So, folks, thanks again for joining us tonight on the Inquisition. This will be posted up, badly edited, on YouTube, and I'll send you the link as well, Adam, once it's all done. Guys, thanks again for joining, and everybody, take care of yourselves and each other for Mortarian's sake.
Cheers, Dunk.
Bye-bye. Cheers.